all of our CMAs are on this side. We have 5 again, and then their titles are actually listed. And then school director, CS, literacy specialist, all these are listed here. And the CMAs are really easily accessible from the side. Core members can just come in, and I wanted to make sure that the names are really big so there was no confusion. So, and it's nicely labeled too.
Great.
Okay. And the first bulletin board in this room you'll find is the Hunter hotspot, and there's an area for comments, suggestions, an area for questions. And at each station you'll find little sheets where core members can fill in their name and the date and maybe make a comment or suggestion. And then those, once completed, go inside their instructions on this, the instructions on this, and their instructions on this too. So it's pretty easy to figure out how it works. The same with the questions here. This area is actually was conceived of by the SD, and she has a binder that she's put together of different materials from classrooms of our CMAs and our staff, and that binder is usually sitting right here, and it shouldn't be removed. Yet it has been removed. I don't have to find it, but it might be being used in a session. Sometimes my SD will use it in a session as an example. So that's here, and then the weekly calendar I usually put up in here. It's big and everyone can see it. So
this is the university calendar for things that are happening in evening schedules.
Right.
Great.
Okay. And then on the back wall here, you'll find our shout-out board. And this took a little bit of time, but this is the same setup here, your typical teacher signage, and the same sheet here, and then you turn in your shout-outs here. I'll collect these every day, and there are a few in here actually, and I'll type them up, and then I make them into little seeds here. And the whole theme is we're planting the seeds of success, and yeah, there's a flower. It was also an idea of my school director to have the teaching as leadership principles as a border on some of our boards. All of our shout outs we asked for to write the name of who the shout out's to, and then maybe who it's from if you'd like. And then we also asked them to write down which teaching as leadership action this shout out represents. And so we're always keeping in mind these principles, and we try to think in those terms usually. So that's also something that I really like, because it's not just so-and-so's nice, it's so-and-so has been doing this and they've been planning purposefully, working relentlessly, and things like that. So that's our shout out board. And then over here we have a few boards that I added later on. I just decided that they were nice to have around. We took a calendar that the Institute gave our core members, and it was rather confusing, and so we actually made a calendar for them. It was one of the things that we got back in surveys. They said they felt like our core members found that they really didn't understand when things were due. So we made a calendar that was a little easier to read, and then I took that and broke it into a weekly calendar that I post here, and everything that's due is listed here, and then if it's going to be returned to them, it's italicized and it's at the bottom. And so this is really helpful. Core members can glance and see what's coming up later on in the week and see what's due.
This comes up when? On Fridays for the next week?
Usually on
Monday
Fridays,
mornings.
and if I don't get it done, then Monday it'll go up first thing. I have it printed out at Temple, and then in the mornings I come and change my calendars usually. And then this last board here, my SD decided after I took a tour of some other schools, there were schools that had weekly goals, and we decided that we wanted to post the rubric focuses for the week, and so I typed those out here so core members can understand why we chose the differentiated sessions we chose and what we really should be kind of focusing on this week at Hunter. And so I just put this board up here so that it is a reminder for core members.
So I see that the green paper has the actual rubric skill. What does the white paper have?
Right, and the white paper has whatever's in the second column. I'm not familiar with the rubric at all, but I think that these are the actions that represent this here.
Great.
So
thanks, Trey.
And then the last thing that I also stole this idea from another school, but this is a take one leave, and I found that Corps members have to leave food out all the time, an area for them to take that food that they're not eating and put it in a box so that other people can have it. And it's working so far. So
Great.
that's it.
And this is the Corps member workroom. Thanks,
Right.
Trey.
Thank you.
Now,
Alrighty, so Corps members then, after checking their mailboxes, doing work in the morning, they'll leave the Corps member workroom, and one of the first things they should see will be our university information board. And this board originally was only this big. It stopped here and went over here, and then after a few different redesigns, I decided that I wanted to create a heading for each office in the ops team. And so we have communications, office ops, residential ops, and so on. And the top level here, you'll have all the office hours for each department. And some of these change weekly, like the copy center and the resource room, and then some of these are just standing office hours. The second row here, you'll find important announcements. Office ops usually is need more copies and things like that. If some of these signs change, like especially the special events signs will change often, then I will have a little new sunburst just to let people know that this sign has changed out. All of these signs could probably be overwhelming, and I like to think of this as more of a resource board. If you have questions about something, you can come to it. But then for these important announcements, these things that do change, I do want to draw people's attention to them. And then the very bottom row, you'll find profiles of each of the ops directors, and then there's even a box of the name for the UBOC there so that people are familiar with the operations coordinators that work back at Temple, and that they know there's a whole team of us here to support them.
so you mentioned you set this up during week 0, I'm assuming, and week 1. When did you do the revamping of it?
I revamped it after we had some surveys. After the Mid-Institute survey, I really felt like I wasn't conveying all of the information in the best way, and we had a lot of ops meetings about it, and then I just took stuff from those meetings and decided that this is how I wanted to lay mine out. And you can see there's a extra sheet of paper that runs right here where I spliced it and added a whole few more feet here, and I'm really happy with it. You also see the teaching as leadership principles around this board too, just as a constant reminder of the things that we should be striving for. And then you'll also find lesson planning clinic locations and a campus map. This initially was helpful just because everyone was still trying to get used to campus and where lesson planning clinics will be. And then the form is always here. And incidentally, this is a picture I took of one of my Corps members. So it's one of our forms.
So you take the lesson planning information that is the master sheet and you distill it down into your specific, for your specific school and your specific CMA groups.
Right. And sometimes, for instance, yesterday there were workshops and Institute learning teams, and actually right here on this area, it's gone now, but I had some of those things posted and I had a big heading that said workshops. It was just a temporary bulletin board, and it's, when the new things pop up, it usually draws people's attention, and then as soon as it was over with, I just removed it, and because it's not needed anymore. But this is really easy to see when you're going to the workroom, and I think that it really caught people's attention and let them know about the workshops.
Great, so most of the Corps members' key information is in this wing.
Right.
Great.
Absolutely. And then you'll find our school information here, and it's labeled as such, and then you'll have more teaching as leadership principles around the quarter, and then our weekly calendar here. We have a calendar for 3-person collaboratives, for 4-person collaboratives, and then our evening schedule is also here. And then below that, you'll find our Corps member directory. And I originally didn't have a directory posted, but some of the Corps members asked who's teaching what grade, who can I go observe, and so this is really helpful. I have it by name, by collaborative, and by region, and I was told to do it by name and by region for the visitors packet, but then I also found that by collaborative, it was easy to find the grades because our grades run by room numbers and by collaborative, so it was really easy for people to know who's teaching what grades when. So that's there, and easily you can compare that then to our calendar there. And then our school team directory, you can find out where most of our CMAs and our CS would be, their offices or their rooms are located. Our school map, so you can compare that directory to the map here. We're on 3 floors, the main floor, 2nd floor, 3rd floor, and then our newsletter here. And I post that, and it changes, of course, weekly. And then there's some brightly colored signs here just for a few important announcements, the operations manuals that you saw in the office. Well, I let people know that they're in there by posting this sign here. And then just a few signs about the bus in case people miss the bus. They can come in here and find some numbers to cabs. And then this is about emergencies.